All right, welcome gods in training. Welcome back to the channel. This is flow state activation. Today we're going to be talking all about how to outgrow your problems. There's a lot of ways in which you can outgrow your problems, and I first understood this concept from AZD, which was this understanding of outcreating your problems. When you have an issue in your mind, you understand that there is a lack of cohesiveness. And I really want you to understand this idea of cohesiveness. Coherence, cohesiveness, harmony, you can use any word that you want. Basically, it's integration, okay? Rather than disintegration or fragmentation, which would be the opposite, or separation, right? So cohesiveness is this great idea where you understand that everything is interconnected. And when I feel separate from the experience, or when I feel separate from a human being, or I feel separate from myself, I create a false self. I understand this. I create this version of me that seems cool, that appears to be liked by society standards or the mainstream narrative standard, but I'm not really truly authentically connecting with my soul self and bringing that through. Okay, so it actually cuts down on your spirituality. So you got to understand something as easy as, let's say you're in a very low state of consciousness, like you're super depressed, you can't get out of bed, you're just in that funk, right? In that lethargy, you can't even move a finger. In that state, if you take a bite-sized action of just cleaning up one little piece of thing, like a desk, just dusting something, right? Cleaning out a desk or doing some little action, it will get you into feeling momentum again. Okay, it doesn't have to be your entire room that you clean, but that little bite-sized cleaning action will get you to excel and outgrow that little thing that you're stressing about, because you're feeling more accomplished by getting something done or doing something, right? So cleaning, I've noticed that is an interesting one that alleviates a lot of people's anxiety. And I didn't used to understand that earlier, because I used to be pretty messy in my old relationships and things like this. Like, I used to keep things kind of everywhere, and you know, I'm a creative person. Like, of course I'm gonna have my own ways of doing things and keep my, you know, my labyrinth, my dungeon, whatever you want to call it, right? That place messy, my man cave, right? Messy. Then I understand also the power now, as I'm growing older, of keeping things clean and knowing where things are. Everything has a place for everything else, you know what I mean? Like, understanding that gives me a lot of potency in my creation, in my magnetism, in my manifestation, okay? So starting to understand that doing little bite-sized things like that will really get you into a conscious state. Another thing is understanding that colors can affect you, right? Like the color of this, right? Looking like Floney Stark up in here. But like, for instance, just color therapy, right, can influence us so much. So if you're dressing up, like if you notice same color, same color, same color, same color, same color, right? So as I'm starting to understand that kind of cohesiveness in terms of color therapy, now I understand, like, let's say if I'm looking at my room, right, and there's too many colors there, and I see that something is off, right? There's something in the environment that has this bright pink, or this random texture of purple, or this random texture of green that just doesn't resonate with the color palette, right? That's gonna take away from my cohesiveness in my actual space, right? The feng shui of the environment will be affected. Why? Because just in general, if you look around, you will see that this place has a cohesiveness, okay? And that's how architecture is designed. That's how so many things are designed, actually, and brought about in this world. There's this inherent idea of universal mathematics connecting us, right? And that kind of aesthetic sensibility, artists know this, right? Creative people know this. They understand, like, when they look at something, yo, that's pretty, that's beautiful. And then when you see something that's kind of off, you also call it out. But then there's this idea of wabi-sabi, right? Which is this idea of finding beauty even in the ugly. Finding, you know, creation within the destruction. Finding order within the chaos, and understanding that chaos creates more order and order creates more chaos. And both kind of build from each other, right? Kind of like masculine, feminine energy in a sense. So once we understand that, okay, my life is going through chaos right now, there's so many problems, you are focusing more on those problems, and as you do, it's gonna pop. right? It's going to get to a precipice, it's going to get to a threshold, and then it's going to get difficult to actually transmute. So when there's a lot of problems or chaos in life, oftentimes you need a little bit of structure, you need a little bit of order to kind of settle things down back to the flow state equilibrium, right? Back to homeostasis again, so things can be more well received and you can start giving more, right? I think a big part of outcreating your problems is adding more value, because you're actually asking the wrong questions, okay? You're asking the wrong questions. There's many questions in your mind where you're overthinking them. You're allowing the question to get you into this weird funk or this weird headspace, right? And once you understand that it's not so much about my weird question, like, how can I focus on fixing this problem, right? If you're asking that question, that's a really bad question. Because why? Because number one, you are using the term problem in the question itself. Your mind is gonna go there. How do I stop how do I stop letting people make fun of me? That's a bad question, man. A better question would be, how can I add more value today that overrides that little problem of someone mocking me for a millisecond, okay? Like, honestly, does that little petty event that happened to you take away from your brilliance, from your glow, from your aura? Absolutely fuck no, 100% fuck no, right? So you actually need to double down and respect yourself. Start respecting yourself. This is March right now. It's March Madness. It's multi-dimensional March, as I call it. And today's day one. I'm gonna make these videos where I'm not gonna stop speaking. I'm just gonna press record and just keep going, okay? Because this is what I really need to speak out, and there are probably some unintegrated ideas. It's gonna be a little bit clunky, but it's also gonna be a part of the holistic cohesion. It's gonna be part of the flow, right? And so I'm just gonna embrace that and talk and speak from my soul, speak from the heart, speak from the gut, speak from the balls, speak from all my chakras, and hopefully you receive some transmissions and you feel good today, okay? That's what I want for you. So start to understand that there are these issues that we have around a lot of different things, okay? Little mundane things that get us into different patterns of disorganization. And if you notice, there's a lot of woo-woo floaty people, okay? And but myself and Ryan G in Primal Sutra, we understand that we are definitely trying to stay away from too woo-woo of a paradigm, because of course we're looking at all of these mystical, esoteric things and experiencing very hyper, altered states of mind. That's a given. That's what flow Jedis do. We get into that altered state and we feel into that. We try to access the bliss body or the Buddha body, right? We try to access that state of mind of emptiness or no mind or mushin. Of course, we're going to experience all of these things, but we try to bring it down to reality. We try to ground the knowledge and bring it down where it's something more functionable and sustainable, okay? So I learn, I'm more so in the Vajrayana tradition of Mahamudra. So I did a guru yoga, or deity yoga, you could call it, tech empowerment that I got from my father. And I was asking him a couple of questions, First of all, when I was sitting there, a lot of the other students, Abhinandak knows this, there's this like little mudra that they do, right? And this mudra represents the mandala, or the representation of the universe in kind of a symbolic form, right? And this is because back in the day, we had Mount Meru, okay? Mount Meru was the representation up to the heavens. It was this idea of 33. That was the symbolic number that kind of translated from the Pali or the Tibetan texts, and this understanding that there are all these like structures going into heaven, right? Ascending up. And we got to understand that, with this mudra, let me just show you guys. Let me put this down and show you. But basically, it's not as complicated as it looks, right? But basically, so fingers all clasped into each other, but then the first two, so this is Mount Meru, right? Ring finger is Mount Meru, representing that, and all the other ones are touching each other, right? So it's a very complex mudra, but for someone who is uninitiated, it looks like a very complex mudra, but really if you understand it, it's quite simple, right? But then I was integrating that piece of wisdom today. You get what I mean? So that created more cohesion in my mind now that I understand the context of why people were doing that. You see what I'm saying? Like, if you just go to a random place and someone is throwing up a gang sign and you're unsure of what that means, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble. In fact, you could probably die, right, in certain neighborhoods. So you got to understand, what does this represent to the context? And I've always understood this difference between context and content, okay? Like, there's content that I'm producing right now, but it's within the larger framework of Flow Zone Academy, Primal Sutra, all the mentors that I've ever had and studied from, all the invisible deities and spirit guides that I have that I'm learning from. You know, it has all of this backing, right? This secret order that is invisible within the chaos that is coming through, which is flow state, you know, these flow state teachings, these makara blessings, right? The makara, by the way, is the gatekeeper, okay, of temples and ancient temples and, you know, holy places. So I believe I'm kind of like a guardian of these flow state teachings. I even have a tattoo to represent that. And I understand that there's a lot of disharmony in the world, okay? There's discord in the world, for sure. But if we understand that the mind is already perfect and complete, which is one of the understandings of Vajrayana, right? Specifically, you can go to Jochen and do that side of things, but I'm more so learning it through this path working, as well as, you know, combining it with other intelligences and things that I know about spirituality and just what I've read, and, you know, trying to kind of figure it out along my own journey. So I understand that there's a lot of people who are like ravers or like people who are going out and they experience these altered states of mind through things like ecstasy or acid or DMT, and these things, okay, they can be used as tools. I don't think they should be used as recreational things that people do regularly, where they're actually depleting their own brain serotonin and they're creating more of a kind of a zombification, right? And if you keep going from this psychedelia trance from one festival to another festival to another festival, you actually start ungrounding yourself and you actually become physically like unable to function in the real world, right? In the 3D physical reality. You become so ungrounded that I don't even know how you can go up and get breakfast in the morning and, you know, and go to a 9 to 5. I don't think, I mean, a lot of people are functional and they can do that, but most of, you've seen those hippies, right? That are completely just, you know, blissed out, and they're bliss junkies as we call them on this channel, right? So the issue with being a bliss junkie, man, is that you're constantly chasing, okay? You're chasing. You could even be a bliss junkie and be addicted to going to the gym, right? And overdoing that, like just going to the gym, not really doing anything else with your life. That just becomes the one thing that you make your life about. And hey, that's valid. If you want to do that, go ahead. But I don't think it's going to create that cohesiveness in your life, right? We need to really focus on holistic self-improvement, which means health, wealth, relationships, and spirituality, holding it all together, basically, right? And so if you understand that there's certain things in life that are optimal, high-level self-help that we don't read. We read the mainstream self-help books that help us, okay? But what about the self-help books that nobody's, like, less people have heard of, but they're more esoteric? We can't really go through a chapter of that, right? We try to read that and we go, what? Like, for instance, the book Open Secret by Wei Wu, okay? Like, you try going through that and your brain is gonna fizzle out probably because it's not used to that level of advancement and that level of paradox and that level of context, right? But now, if you're at a very good place and you try reading that, then you might get certain downloads that other people might not get, okay? You know, this is what is fascinating to me, because somebody who's wanting to study marketing and they read Gary Vee a year and then they don't do anything. And again, Gary Vee is a bad example, right? It's like, I understand that. Why you gotta hustle okay, he's too much for me a little bit, but it is what it is. Like, he has good advice. He has, authenticity in his own ways. So I'm not hating on that whole hustle culture in a sense, because he is about providing value, and he is about, leveraging things and, managing time and taking time very seriously and things like this. But it's almost like looking at it the opposite of Eckhart Tolle, right? In a sense, in the other side of the spectrum. So you have to find yourself somewhere in between. You don't want to be too Gary, and you don't want to be too Eckhart. Because, in a sense, they're just one side of the coin, right? It's like, it's difficult to imagine someone like Gary Vee, sitting down in Padmasana, and just like, chanting mantras. And it's difficult to imagine like Eckhart Tolle having like, hardcore sex with a woman. Like, I don't know. I mean, that's just where my mind is going. I'm not being like objectively like, judgmental of these people, but it's hard to like, our mind likes to categorize, right? And put people into boxes and like label them that they're like this and they're not like this, right? As a guy watching, what if you're like, dude, I'm not that threesome kind of guy, right? You've already labeled yourself, and now you're actually blocking yourself from that possibility of ever having a threesome. You know what I mean? So it's like really speaking to yourself in such a way that enhances your own human experience, but also soul expression, right? So you don't want to be one of these bliss junkies floating around from festival to festival, completely ungrounded. But you don't want to be so into the rat race, right? The 9 to 5 that you get fizzled out in that area, and being too grounded, too much into what I don't want to call it the matrix, because now that word has lost its edge. So many people are saying it now. So we need a new word for it. You guys can comment what you want to call it instead. But you know what I mean? Like, let's get over this. I feel like now we're evolving past this kind of matrix paradigm where we understand that mainstream media, of course, there's this hidden thing like that we feel like is controlling us. But again, we shouldn't have that thing also distract us and like make us feel weaker and smaller. And you know what I mean? Like, in a sense, there's this analogy of the golden jail cell, right? Where you're still in a jail cell, but it looks pretty, right? It's decorated, you have golden bars. You have all these little, decorations around the jail cell. You have all the amenities that you have like some great water and like a drinking fountain, and a vending machine. But at the same time, you're still trapped, right? So you don't want to live in that mentality where you're just still trapped by this old paradigm. You want to live in a freedom, an expressiveness, where you understand that, hey man, I'm here to be me. I'm here to express myself to the greatest capacity that I can, right? And you got to understand this idea of your soul expression. And it's something related to your soul's expansion. So your mind will fight the things that is really good for you. Let's say that you're reading a book on, Eastern esotericism or something that's going to change your life forever. You are not going to be able to get through that book without your mind fighting you. Your mind is going to fight you so hard on that thing, right? That it's going to be so beneficial. Like, you could be like a millionaire or a billionaire by reading this one business book, but you'll stay away from that business book at all costs because you're like, nah, I don't want to do that, right? And, a lot of people, they take this wisdom and they kind of scatter it and they don't really optimize it to the full extent of it. But then the things that our mind loves and it delights in, the bliss junkie effect, right? The instant gratification, the explicit imagery or like different things that, pleasure our minds and make us feel really good. Our mind loves that stuff, man. It's like Cheetos. It's like hot Cheetos to the mind. It's just like, yo, let me just eat more and more of this, right? And let me consume this and consume this. It's so easy to consume nonsense, right? Like reality shows, bro. Reality shows are so easy to consume, right? Hot people, just like social maneuvers without actually having to socialize yourself. You're like objectively looking at these people socialize and interact because we're all stuck at home. And then we get addicted to that pattern of like, seeing others socially interact and like flirt and like make mistakes and like trying to, dogmatically learn from that shit. You know what I mean? Whereas we would rather be the one in the reality show being, hey, my name is Jeff. I'm 29 years old. I've been to, the coastal marine area of Florida or whatever, I don't know. This is just a random example of a reality show. I would probably be like, hello, welcome. My name is Master Makara. I'm a flow state catalyst. I help, the new agers of this world to transcend their existence, to be much more connected to their primal selves. Oh, snap. Oh, snap. Okay. Men, you need to go out there and beat that, okay? Send me your reality show submissions. Women, you got to change your panties after that, because that sheesh, whoa, man, God, okay? Just having fun, guys. So, in a sense, we get addicted to these, like, platforms and these, things, right? Netflix, Hulu, there'll be new ones that come out, right? In the future, we'll have something called, like, Snuggle Vision or something like that, right? Well, we'll turn it on. It'll be like an app we download. And like, hey, do you have your Snuggle Vision set to, 4K? And we'll have all these like VR, like little chips in our brains. And like, we'll just like need to press a button on our heads or something, right? We need to like press our third eyes, and then we'll just all tap into this like infinite like cloud matrix where we're all just like, floating around in nothingness and void. But it's like an astral void. It's like a quantum artificially inseminated astral void, right? How does my mind think of these ideas? This is not my mind. Again, this is like just downloads from like, raw solar energy. In any sense, the more resistance that you face in life, this is not always true, right? Sometimes life is just forcing you out of a bad situation. Like it's just resisting because it's like not meant for your expansion. But then other things where you might be unfamiliar with it, right? So let's say you're learning a new language. There's gonna be a lot of resistance, man. I remember first going to piano lessons when I was younger. Oh, that was hell, okay? That was hell on earth, man. What the hell am I even doing? What is a C sharp B minus? Okay, what is even going on? Where do my fingers go, first and foremost? Okay, teach me from the start, because this thing is confusing, right? That's what the mind tries to do. It tries to understand. It tries to logically interpret things and categorize things instead of embracing and understanding that experience itself can be a beautiful teacher, right? You going through the step by step, step A, step B, step C, can actually give you a teaching that is hidden, that you cannot understand logically with the logical mind. But once you just got to put your fingers together sometimes. Okay, I love doing this. By the way, you've seen people do this. A lot of celebrities, right? Do this one. This is for like gaining more energy, momentum. But if you just have your fingers together like this, this is good for hemisphere synchronization. There's a lot of different mudras that you can do that I like to use, and I'll be sharing them in various videos. Of course, you got to know the Kubera mudra as well. Let's talk about, shout out to Ryan G, who's connected with Kubera. Okay, the Kubera mudra, okay, just these three fingers and the rest down. This is for wealth expansion. It's also good for really giving you like a solid extra strength of an idea, or like you need some momentum or like power to do something and like make some massive decisions, right? It's always good for those. But yeah, the more resistance that you feel, it's like a slingshot, right? So this is what Stephen Pressfield says, right? The author of War of Art. He says the more resistance that you feel, it's going to pull you into your soul's expansion. Of course, I'm paraphrasing, but it's going to pull you more into your soul's expansion, okay? So your mind is going to fight against things that are unfamiliar, but it's going to be good for you, right? So, meditating is good for you, but your mind is going to fight against it. But it is its most natural state of rest, right? It's like the default mode network. It is like you just sitting and being mindful and observing the present moment and observing your breath. But if you don't like the present moment, you're going to be so attached to your thoughts. And this is what I've learned is through going through this, my own kind of mental well-being journey. Like I used to be very depressed, very anxious, couldn't, perform publicly, couldn't talk to people socially, things like this. But then I overcame that. And one of the ways I overcame that is understanding that I'm not my thoughts, right? That my thoughts are just a conglomeration of things that people have told me, experiences that I've had, maybe traumas that I've had, maybe even like the outer critic. What I mean by that is the inner critic being affected by the voice of parents, teachers, conditioning, media, things like this, right? And so I immediately understand that that is not me. I am not my thoughts, but I am the one thinking those thoughts. So let's say that someone pisses me off. It's not that I'm angry. I'm thinking of the fact that anger is emerging in my system in response to something that this person has said. So if you can look at it more objectively, and I like to do this, man. I like to call my I or the me. I say I and me a lot, but what I really say when I say I and me is the all-I, the all-seeing I, the I am presence, right? And sometimes I'll even refer to myself as the self-structure, okay? So I'll say something like, the self-structure is realizing that he needs to itch himself below his nose or something like that, and then I go do it, right? The self-structure is now noticing that he's walking through this park, okay, and he's being very conscious about it. The self-structure is now observing the fact that his sunglasses are reflecting against the sun and he feels really good, right, in this moment. Now, I said he in that thing, but again, it takes you away from this kind of, I guess you could call it stereotyping the human self, right? It's like really pinpointing like, okay, this is the label, this is A, this is B, this is C, and putting like a framework around it without even finding the context or the understanding that, okay, this can be actually helpful to me, or maybe this can expand me in a certain way, and creating more, smoothness in your experience, right? So this is really how you can outcreate your problems, is you stop attaching to this false self, right? What narcissists can do is they can let their false self emerge and their real self stay hidden. So maybe the real self feels a little bit wounded. The false self can come in and be like, nah, man, but you suck though, and it'll deflect. If someone says that you're toxic in the relationship, the narcissist will be like, no, you're the toxic one, right? And it'll flip it. So that's the thing, right? You really have to understand that there's this false self. It's almost like selling your soul to the devil, right? That's kind of how you can describe it. It is really that. Like the false self takes over, right? You're just this hollow shell, this empty shell of a person, and you just have that false self take over rather than the real self, that truly loves and wants humanity to expand and grow and do amazing things. Instead, you have it where you create this like facade or this mirage. You're trying to pretend and like create this image for yourself that's like, oh, I have to be like this, or I have to fit into this standard, or I have to match this kind of context in a different way, right? I have to buy all of these products so that I can fit into this context. And that's not a way to live, man. That creates more resistance. So I'm not saying that don't get jacked. I'm not saying, don't be a millionaire. I'm not saying any of that. You go and do what you want to do, but don't be attached to it, Enjoy the thrill of wearing an Armani jacket without actually saying that, oh, this is an Armani jacket that I'm wearing. I'm so cool right now, right? Instead, you want to just have that freedom. And what freedom really is this definition of freedom that's really new, right? It's not looking at the very stereotypical definition of freedom, right? We're looking at freedom as a luxury of choice, okay? And the word luxury comes from the word luxuria, okay? Luxuria is actually a word for lust. So if you understand that lust is actually this understanding that it is procreation, right? It is what moves the world forward. Without that carnal desire, without that libido, without that understanding that we have this thing within us that wants to procreate, that wants to live, that wants life to grow, that we shamed in culture, that we call the serpent, that we call the snake, that we've understood we can suppress that part of us, but really we need to let it grow and expand within ourselves, okay? This is multidimensional March. Already this video is going to be fire. I can already tell people are fired up with me speaking like this, because this is what people need, right? This is what people need to wake them out of their sleepiness, of their trance, okay? That feels good to say that, man. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit everything that you can and possible on your laptops, Just start pressing a bunch of buttons, do all of that. and I'll be with you soon. I'll be with you tomorrow, okay? Have an incredible day. May the flow be with you and stay legendary. Let's get it today. Upward Spiral Gang, may we never be the same again. You already know. Let's crush it.